Welcome to the Couch Time podcast, where we give you tools to connect with your kids and point them to Jesus. I'm Stephen, and I'm here with Dr. Chad Everhart, who is the campus minister at University of the Cumberlands. He was one of my main mentors when I was in college, and still works at the university, helping students at Cumberlands stay connected with church, and the head of the missions and ministry department, and all sorts of different things at the university. So we're having him as a guest on the podcast this week as we talk about life after high school and how you as parents can shepherd your kids, as some of you are beginning to work through this stage of getting your kids ready for college. And we thought, what better way to do that than have, an expert from higher education come on and kind of interview him and talk through the things that he's noticed and seen through his experience at the university. So, Chad, give us a little bit of your background, your experience, why you are the number one best expert in higher education students and student ministry.
Yeah, that's funny. I definitely wouldn't say I'm an expert, but appreciate the confidence. Appreciate you having me on today. I have been in higher education for 15 years as a professor, as an administrator, as a minister. So I have a lot of experience. I've been in both public institutions and private, secular and Christian. So I've seen a lot of things and experienced a lot of things too that I think can be helpful. So again, I hope that what I have to say today will be of value. And I have some thoughts on things too that it's not just I'm going to give you a bunch of facts and observations, but I want to also interpret that for you and get you to really think about the implications of things, both in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah. So, hopefully parents, if you're parents of seniors in high school, especially juniors in high school, as they begin to look towards college, and even, our other parents of middle schoolers and young high schoolers, hopefully this will begin to prep you just to start thinking about, how am I setting my kid up to stay faithful when they step into college? So, Chad, can you just kind of give us an overview of your experience of what you see happen the majority of times with students who maybe grew up in church families, and then they get to college, whether it was your experience at Appalachian State, where you were before Cumberland's, a public university, or at Cumberland's, a private Christian university. What is it like? Give us just like a state of the union.
Yeah.
What is the culture like right now?
Yeah. It's pretty complex, but to kind of boil it down to its essence, let me tell you a few things to you parents that I think will be very important for you to hear. Let me say this, like, first and foremost, I know kind of in our culture today, the thought is I got to get my kids to 18 and then they're off on their own. They've got to go make their own way in the world and figure their life out and get a job and get out of my hair in some ways, right? And I mean, I've got 4 children, so, I understand that mindset. But one of the things that I do see that it's very much a common issue with young adults today is that parents really do have that mindset, even if they don't articulate it in such a way, and even if they don't formalize it with saying, hey, good luck in the world, we'll see you later at holidays and stuff. I don't think any parent intentionally does that, but I think it is actually happening. And that inevitably is a problem. And what I mean by that is during the years of 18 to 25, I would argue this, and this may come as a shock, that should be a time of life where you are discipling your kids more, not less, because they are trying to understand what they believe about life to begin with.
Right.
They are developing their worldview. They have a worldview when they're in high school and middle school, and it's your worldview for the most part, parents. Some of it's Stephen's worldview as his youth pastor, right? Or their youth pastor, right? Like, they've gotten this from other people, their teachers at school, whatever, their coaches. But when they get to college, they really are out on their own and trying to figure out what it is they believe. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to believe long term. And the truth of the matter is, by about age 25, 26, that worldview will be established and fairly unmovable by that point. And so what happens in those years of young adulthood, are some of the most critical times. I mean, researchers would tell you that it's almost like the preschool years again. And
Wow.
so some people are going, man, it might have been a while since that. But if you've had preschoolers in recent years, you'll definitely know it. But every day is a new experience, a new thing they're learning. They've conquered from just laying idle to crawling. So it's like you move from infant to toddler, and those toddler preschool years, they can actually walk, and that's a big deal. And then they're starting to be able to draw, and they're starting to be able to communicate through language and identify things and all that kind of stuff. Well, they say that in the years of 18 to 25, it's almost like a repeat. It's like almost starting over in a lot of these things. Every experience is new. They get information coming in from all these different angles. They're trying to figure out who they can trust and who can they can be vulnerable with. And so that would be a big thing for parents to just realize, is like, you almost have to go back to the preschool years. And that's not so much from a physical standpoint,
Right.
which it mainly is there, but it is kind of comparable from an intellectual standpoint. For sure. So that's a big issue. And that's why I feel like what I see is that parents drop the kids off and think it's all going to be fun and it's all going to work out. And all the foundation that we laid all these years by either sending them to Christian school or to VBS or to youth group, and having great youth pastors like Stephen or someone like that, investing in them, that will be enough. And it may be. But I'm afraid you might be rolling the dice if you kind of think that way, because to be honest, and I know you think that they don't trust you, they don't love you, don't care about you. They're probably kind of defiant, and they're definitely starting to become even more of a know-it-all. Stephen can probably relate to this too. It's really interesting as an educator and a minister to have seen this, but they actually love you guys more than you realize, and they value your opinion more than you realize. And you have impressed so much on them. And if I was going to do a survey right now, walk out of my office, and I said, what's the most important thing in your life as far as what people think about you, what group of people you care about the most as to what they think about what you are and what you believe, they'd say my parents. Now, unless you're from a really broken situation, but for the most part, kids, especially if grown up in a Christian home, they tell you that's the priority, even though they don't act like that. So I say all that to say they still want your discipleship. Actually, they want it more. They might not even be able to say it in those terms like I've just said it there, like discipleship or mentorship or guidance. But quite honestly, they do. And so that's what I see, is that you've got 18 to 25-year-olds establishing their worldview. Got a lot of competing interests, philosophies of worldview, very ungodly things coming at them from all angles. And they don't really have anybody to help them decipher that. And parents sort of kind of go, well, they don't even know how to address it, maybe. So they're not very prepared for it.
And I'd say sadly, like you and I even would see it a lot when we were at Cumberland's, a small Christian school, is that there'd be these kids that get dropped off their freshman year, and all of a sudden they're just getting pulled in every little direction. And often their faith or the importance of being in a church or staying in community gets kind of just stripped away as they get into college. I think most of the time it's because they don't kind of have a plan going in of how am I going to be ready and mentally prepared and have a good structured decision of what I'm going to do to stay faithful when I enter college. And I think parents, like you're saying, kind of just say, like, they just trust that since they've been raised this whole way their whole life, that they're like, of course they're going to get in church, and of course they're going to like find Christian friends. And it's the parents' role, while you still have them in your household, to kind of prep them for that. So what do you think are some of the factors that contribute to students that transition from high school to college, like faithfully, like where you've seen them at the end of their freshman year, they are still in a solid place. They haven't thrown their faith out the window, which we've seen with preachers' kids, regular kids, church kids, non-church, like all sorts of different people.
Yeah, the ones that really do thrive, the ones whose faith grows and not just sustainable, but actually grows. There are some factors that I would say there. And, I can't say that this is always the case, but there are some consistent things that are out there. I would say first to parents this: the ones whose parents are definitely involved in their spiritual life on a daily basis, and this is something that's a part of your home life, those kids seem to do a lot better than the kids who just, it's a Sunday morning church thing or Wednesday night youth group thing. Those kids don't endure as much as the ones that this saturates and permeates the entire family life. It's wired into their DNA. And it doesn't matter what's thrown at them. They may experience temptation and they may fall into some sin, but they have this kind of built into them in such a way that they're always going to come back to it. So the ones that I've seen to be more successful, their families take this extremely serious, and it's a part of their lifestyle. I'd say another thing is a lot of these kids who, I say kids, I mean young adults, I'm trying to say kids here, young adults that really are successful as well, their faith has been tested before they got to college. Mm-hmm. Now, I will tell you this, parents, every one of your kids is going to get their faith tested in college, like they've never experienced it. Yeah. But the ones who've had no testing at all, it becomes as a real shock when they get here and they're starting to experience some things they've never seen before. When they got some big questions that they've never even considered, much less have answered. And so I've seen that to be something as well with this, is like there needs to be some testing. Well, how does that happen? I'm not saying like put your kids in compromising situations. Yeah. What I really mean by that is that you have deep theological conversations. You have deep real life application questions with regards to living this life following Jesus. Yeah. And so I would tell you that an 18-year-old who even comes to this campus and struggles with understanding the problem of evil in the world or and justice, those types of things, those are big philosophical questions they want answered. Understanding, the fairness of God, understanding just even that the Bible is trustworthy and true and sufficient. I mean, some of these things, those need to be just already taken care of before they get here, because they are going to be challenged that. People are going to ask them big questions, go, how do you believe this? Because of X, Y, and Z, these big questions, philosophical ones, and they've never even heard those before. Well, I've never thought about that. And so I'm not saying you got to have an apologetics course for your kids every day, but I do think that you need to start to realize that they need to internalize this faith much deeper, even in the middle school, high school years, and wrestle with some of these bigger issues, bigger questions that are out there before they get here. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's got to be a little bit, because it will be a major shock to them if they haven't had some of that experience for sure. But I think it also goes back to your point about preparation. Yeah. The ones who are prepared also thrive once they get here too. They have in their mind, I'm going to be a part of a campus ministry. They have in their mind, I'm going to be a part of a local church. They have in their mind, I've already got a discipline for studying the Bible every day and praying every day. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do that personally. They have in their mind, I'm going to be a part of a Bible study somewhere. I mean, they're resolute when they get here that they're going to do these things. Yeah. And they seek them out and they find them. Even though people like me and my staff go out looking for them too, they have in their mind, they've already made that decision that they're going to do those things. But if they haven't made that decision, they're not going to do it. I mean, I know it seems like they would, but they're not. Yeah,
I was saying, and I think that's something that our parents, as you're taking your students on college visits, as you maybe have decided this is where they're going to university, or this is where they're moving, look for churches with them. Have a time where it's like, hey, like, let's search for some good churches around that school, or contact people where you can find it out, and make a plan like, hey, first Sunday, go check out this church. Second Sunday, go check out this church, or maybe visit the church, before they get dropped off. But I think what happens a lot of times is those first few weeks with students, if they aren't haven't decided where they're going or what they're going to do their first Sunday, they're just going to kind of get into a rhythm of, I can sleep in, I can do this, I can do that. And it's fine for a little bit, but then as it goes longer and longer and you drift more and more, you see these students starting to walk away, not ever getting connected to community, not finding those friendships. But I think, yeah, the importance of having community or a place where you're going to have community prepared and thought through before you get there is crucial, because you have to seek it out. It's going to be something that the student has to be intentional about. There's going to be people looking for them for all sorts of different communities, some very far from God and some close to him. So you kind of have to have made up in your mind, what are you going to do when you get to school? And I think, yeah, finding a local church, is huge and important in that, for sure.
Let me share a really sobering truth with regard to that. Stephen's spot on with that. Okay, I've been in higher ed for 15 years. I've been at a Christian private university for 5, and I've talked with hundreds and hundreds of prospective students and parents over these years. But even in just the 5 years I've been here, let's just take that time period at a Christian university, all of the hundreds of students and parents that I've talked to. I can tell you, out of all those visits, I can count on one hand how many parents have asked me where my kids should go to a church here. I mean, that's terrifying to think about. And I actually thank those parents. I'm like, praise God, you asked me that question. Now I'm going to tell you the answer to that if you come and visit with me. But the fact that the parent had that on their mind, like, hey, what are some good local churches there? And even better, I've had a couple out of that handful on one hand, right, who've said, hey, we looked at this church, and this church, been doing some research beforehand. What are your thoughts on that? We're from this denominational background, or we know so-and-so at this place. And that communicates to the student, the prospective student sitting there, that like mom and dad have done their homework, they're going to be set up for success. And that's great. But then when I have to bring it up because the parents haven't, they're going, I guess it's not that important to mom and dad. I don't know that's going to really be that important to me. Yeah, this is just a guy who's a stop along the way. We'll get on to the cafeteria or the weight room and everything else I'm interested in. So that's just something to think about. You're communicating to your child when you go and don't ask about those things, that it's not that important to you, that they get plugged into that. And every college town is going to have awesome local churches that really do cater to college students. And you can find that stuff really easy, for sure.
And I think with your prior point of saying that parents really need to be following up and discipling their kids, even in those years after they leave their home, is that you can now on the first Sunday message them or call them and be like, hey, did you get to check out, such and such church that you actually know the name of? And oh, how was Pastor so-and-so? Because you found his name on the website. Like, you can ask pointed questions, not to like condemn if they didn't go, but hopefully as some amount of accountability to the student of like, oh yeah, I am going to do that. I do want to be able to talk with my parents about how that went.
And nowadays we've had COVID and everybody's been doing online church at times. Like, there's no excuse. You could actually go to some virtual worship services at a variety of these places. And even the smaller churches have these things on Facebook or something like that. And you could set aside sometimes maybe a Sunday night, several Sunday nights, and you could go and watch a service, go, this looks good. I mean, theologically seems like a good fit. A lot of motivation, energy, excitement, enthusiasm. I think this would be a great place. You actually have already heard and seen the pastor. You'll know what you're going to get there when you go. So, I mean, we're kind of without excuse nowadays of saying, well, I'm nervous about going there. I don't even know what I'm getting into. You'll know some of it. So
I was going to say, like, I was in that same question. It's like, how do you help a kid find a church, or what should the students be looking for in a local church in the area? Because I would assume that most students have never had to try to find a church, their whole life until college. That was the first time I ever had to be like, okay, which church am I going to go to? Like, that's a hard decision to make. So what should students be looking for in a local church? And how can parents help them find a solid biblical church?
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a multifaceted question too. So, and I'm going to hurt your feelings here for a little bit as well with this, but what I have found to be more problematic than anything is that parents oftentimes won't let their kids be a part of a church that really speaks and ministers to their generation. And the way that they mainly do that is putting this expectation on their child to come home every weekend.
Yeah.
And if you're at a long distance, that's less of an issue. I understand.
Right.
But particularly where I am, and we have a lot of students that live maybe 30 minutes to an hour away, they go home every weekend and go to their home church. And guess what? They might be the only person there their age.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be a part of a multi-generational church. You should. But if they have nobody their age and their life stage, there's nothing speaking to the problems of their day and time, that becomes a major issue. So as you are encouraging your children with church, I would say one of the things you got to do is just realize like they have to make their faith their own. And in doing that, they've got to be able to find a church that's a good fit. They are going to naturally, if they are submissive kids, just follow your lead. And if you're like, we really want you home every weekend, we want you here at such and such church. Well, I mean, that can be good, but like if they're going to school in Cincinnati where you are, or in that area, North Kentucky, it's like, it could be easy. We'll come back. And that may be a good fit for them. But if their community is on the University of Cincinnati's campus, then it might be that the Grace campus where you are, that might not be as good a fit as another one that's right there adjacent to it or something like that.
Yep.
So you've got to let go of that some. It's not they can't on the special holidays and things like that come and do it. But if it's not really set up well to minister to young adults, that would be first and foremost. And so it's got to be that when you're looking for a place to plug in. And most of the students I deal with, the churches are coming from, have nothing. Matter of fact, the 18 to 25-year-old demographic is the black hole of almost every church in America. I mean, really. And so, you got to realize that they're not always going to be great. And so then even when you go to a college town, it's easy to go, well, theologically, we're maybe going to be more aligned with these people, so you should go there, but everybody's over the age of 60 there. You'll be the youngest person there. That might not be the wisest move on that front. I mean, it may be better to just go, listen, they're formulating their faith, but really I need to probably find something community-wise too. It needs to be a balance. Good theology, obviously meaningful worship, but good community within it as well. They need a balance of all those things. And I'm afraid sometimes we get lopsided in one place or the other, and we miss that. And
I'd say especially, if you're sending your kids away to college, community and having a place where they're going to have friendships that are going to push them to Jesus, help them have a place to be vulnerable, help them have a place to work through that. When they're out doing something stupid on a Saturday night, they have friends that are going to call them out on it and bring them back in. Like the community of fellow believers that are going to see their real life, are going to be involved in their life, are going to live life and do life with them as a part of the church is huge and incredibly important, as well as having strong biblical theology that is good and solid.
Well, I guess like one pitfall I would say though that's related to that, this idea of like community. I think we're always in search of the perfect church anyway, and we're not going to find it. None of us are in a lot of ways. And I think that I'm not, no parent would ever say this, but in their mind, they're almost thinking of like, well, if they don't go to this kind of church that's got all this kind of stuff that's familiar to us, then it's almost like I just rather not go anywhere. And it's like, well, that you can't really have that attitude either, because remember, they're going to be experiencing a lot of new and different things. They're still formulating what they believe in their worldview in a lot of ways. And so you would rather them go somewhere, like you said, where it's just authentic community, people that love the Lord, as long as they're within orthodox theology. It may be different than yours, but those things are the most critical, because they will develop this over time. But I feel like sometimes people are so dogmatic about certain things, and ultimately I think they shortchange their kids so much that they just go, well, I'm not even going to go. I mean, it's not even worth it. You've made it impossible for me to find something because you want me to replicate what I've got here somewhere else. And it's like your church is not here where I live. So if you come to the Cumberlands, we don't have Grace here. As much as I'd love to have you guys here, we don't have you here. So that DNA will not be portable completely.
I was going to say that's big thing as we kind of wrap up. And I remember having to work through this when I went to college, was there were some things at the church that I ended up going to that I wasn't in, like, it wasn't how I would want it or do it, but it's like, hey, I'm going to submit still to my leadership. I'm going to submit to this church because I trust that they love Jesus. They love the Bible. They're teaching accurately. And maybe they don't have the exact programs that I had at my previous church, or the worship is a little different than at my previous church. But this idea that you're committing to a group of people, and you're submitting to a group of people, that's like, hey, I'm going to invest in this group. I'm not just going to come just to get everything from where just everything exactly like I used to have it, but I want to be, a member of a body that I can contribute to and they can pour into me. And kind of, getting out of this consumer mindset as you send off your kid is really important. So last like little question, what conversations can parents start having with their kids, just to wrap this up, summary, what conversations can parents have with their kids, maybe even before their senior year, to set up their kid to faithfully, hopefully transition into college, whether they're sending them away or staying, here at a local school?
This might sound harsh, but I'm just going to say it because I think it's what needs to be said. I think you got to figure out if they're regenerate. I think you got to really find out, are they truly a believer and not just a church kid? There's nothing more devastating to me, and Stephen saw this when he was down here as well. A lot of people come to campus thinking they're Christians because they've been in church their whole life. They know all the lingo, but they don't know Jesus. And it's like, you'd be better off to work through that now while they're in your home, while you are with them all the time, than to hope that it works out when they get there. I'm not saying by God's providence it won't. Hopefully they come across people that will help them. But I would tell you the bulk of the students that I've engaged at both of the institutions where I've been, who have identified as Christians when they came in, left as atheists when they left. It's scary. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, a lot of them do. And why is that? Because their faith wasn't real before they even got here. Now, I've seen some who were waffling and got really serious. I'm not saying that isn't possible, but I am saying that, like, you need to ask really hard, deep questions about what they believe and, like, really walk through it. I mean, really talk about these things. Ask them what their questions are of you. Like, don't be scared of that. And if you don't have the answer, go, listen, I don't have the answer right now, but let's go find it out. But if your answer to them is, well, we'll talk to Stephen about that, or go ask him about that, that's not the right answer. I mean, he's going to have good answers. He's going to help shepherd your kids, but you've got to be a partner in ministry with Stephen. You've got to be doing work on your end. But I'm just telling you that first and foremost, you need to find out that they truly know and love the Lord. And if they do, that's the thing you can have confidence in sending them off. But if they don't, get it worked out now. Answer those tough questions now.
Yep. And I say, and if you are concerned, about their salvation, especially as you're about to send them off to college, then you need to put in even more work of making sure, like, who are they going to be connected with once they leave my home, that I know that person is going to look out for them, or that I call a campus ministry, call a local church, ask questions, see who they can get plugged in with, so that hopefully there's people that already have them on their radar even before they show up at the school. Well, Chad, this was super helpful. Sorry, Dr. Everhart. This was super helpful, and it's always good talking. Parents, we love you. We're praying for you. Shepherding your kids, discipling your kids is difficult, but there is grace for you every day, for what the Lord has given you this responsibility of. And we pray for your kids that when they leave your home, when they leave your nest, that they would find a faithful group of believers that they could be connected with, and that the Lord would do a good work of holding them fast in his hand. So we love you guys. We're thankful. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for watching.
You can follow us on Instagram at the Couch Time Podcast.
Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Also, let us know if there's any topics or things you'd like us to cover. You can comment and email us at podcast@graceky.org.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with other parents.